Good. Agent Har here. I have this kind of like interesting, maybe not, question running through my mind now and again. So I thought, hey, maybe I'll talk about it and see what other people think. Or how does it hit you? Will you find it helpful or maybe not? Well, here's the thing, right? People who get involved with people who have all the patterns of borderline personality disorder, though maybe not diagnosed, or people that are diagnosed. And when I say all the patterns, well, they don't all have all the patterns, but you see a number of patterns. And so within that, a lot of people are like, well, I don't know if he or she's really diagnosed, so maybe I got it wrong. Maybe I should keep trying harder. Maybe I should go back, do it again, that kind of thing in relationships or in dating with somebody with BPD. Okay, well, where did it actually begin, I wonder? That people started to be in these relationships, probably been going on for all time, right? Just without us knowing what it was and that type of thing. So if people have been dating and are married to people with BPD, let's say, at least for 100 years, as if like it wasn't around before or these issues weren't, whatever. So for the last 80, plus years, let's say, I know I just said 100, 80 plus years or so, definitely 60. Anyway, people have been having these relationships, and people who have codependency are the ones who are getting into, by and large, okay, with a very small percentage, maybe that's not true of, very small percentage, less than 5%. You're getting into these relationships, and you don't know when you're the very first time you have a relationship with somebody with BPD, well, you don't know. Then there's the quiet, discouraged, borderline manifestation of that, and there's the petulant, borderline manifestation of BPD, and what happens in relationships. But the point I'm trying to really get to here is, so when did it begin, I wonder, that people with the problem of patterns of BPD or BPD and lots of BPD traits, etc., could be diagnosed or are diagnosed or are diagnosable, and the person that is dating them or married to them or the favorite person, loving and caring about them. How do you think you get into that rescuing? How do you think you get into wanting to try to rescue, try to fix, try to change, try to make them into someone, well, that generally you thought they were in the idealization honeymoon phase, if you got that. But I wonder where this all began. And I mean, I don't know, and nobody's going to know, and nobody's going to be able to say, well, was this first couple over here in 1822 or 1945 or 1967? No. But what do I mean by where did it begin? It just seems to be such a natural, unnatural, fitting fantasy bond that one person in the relationship, situationship, with the person with BPD, and maybe unbeknownst, starts to try to like rescue, fix, teach, change, admonish, say, hey, you can't do that. Why are you doing that? All those kind of things. And then you're trying to get seen and heard. So I just thought of it this way. It's interesting that this has been going on for like ages in humanity, I'm sure, but we know for, at least like 1930s, 40s, in there somewhere, one degree or another. So this is how strong the propensity is for people that get with somebody with these patterns of BPD and or have a diagnosis to want to like try harder, to want to like I said, fix, rescue, change, teach them things, effectively people end up trying to control the person with borderline personality disorder patterns thereof who's trying to control you or who leaves you feeling controlled. And so how is it that both parties don't enter most of these relationships with already some of that going on in relational styles? Obviously, people with BPD do, and I think people with codependency do, and or any other problems, issues that can come from childhood that could arise that somebody who is non-personality disordered, not cluster B personality disordered, would have this kind of overgiving, overcaring, obsession, trying to get this person back, like codependency. And so have you ever thought of it that way, that simply when one person has the cluster B patterns of BPD or NPD, and another person doesn't have those exact patterns, but they usually have the opposite kind of like patterns that will fit. Not a good fit, not a healthy fit, usually not a lasting fit. But I don't think it's like any kind of coincidence that just because somebody realizes that, oh, somebody's having a lot more emotional issues, outbursts, silent treatments, etc., giving you the silent treatment, not wanting to talk, oh, they go from hot to cold, hot to cold, hot to cold. It's like, what's going on with this person? Okay, fair enough. But then what's going on with all the people that are with these people? Because most people, like good 95% plus of people, have codependency, and they start doing this dance routine of like, I'm going to help you. I'm going to fix you. You need to change this. No, stop that. That hurt me. And of course it does, right? But people with BP are coming along with their own hurt and pain and inability, disorganized attachment, inability to attach, lack of self, inability to love. So just think that it's interesting that this is such a well understood thing now. It wasn't maybe like in the 1930s or something, but it's well understood now. And yet so many people still want to deny that they have codependency or some kind of childhood adverse experience that creates the maladaptive response of codependency. And what that's really all about could be PTSD from childhood, could be CPTSD from childhood, could be codependency with a little bit of dependent personality disorder traits or more. But I guess what I'm just getting to here, and you might be like, well, what am I talking about this for? Because it's so simple, so basic. Yeah, but how many people out there, all through the echo chamber of this nonsense? I'm not saying everywhere is nonsense online, but a lot of places are. And I try to keep this channel and my podcast as much as I can out of the echo chamber. I'm not saying that's 100% perfect. But the thing is, with this big echo chamber of like everybody and their mother, and I don't know, everybody and everybody, well, I was with this person with BPD, I was with then borderline to this, borderline to codependency. What do you mean I have codependency? I'm not a codependent. And some people go, oh yeah, I know I'm a codependent. Yeah. But then I think people minimize codependency to maximize cluster B. Understandable in many ways, right? But not if you're hanging in there and not realizing how often unconsciously you're trying so hard to change them, to fix them, to rescue them. But even more than that, it's not all the giving, because people with codependency, you are giving to get, because you're human too, and you have needs and you want things as well, and you need validation, usually, often in relationships. And so there's the give of the codependent to get, and then there's just the take of the person with BPD. People with BPD can often, whether they're a man or a woman, they can often give a little bit in the beginning, right? And they're seeking identity through you. And so there's like that honeymoon phase, and it's like a fantasy. It's a siren song. It's way too good to be true. It's not what really is for either one of you. This is the other thing I would like people with codependency to think about. You have every right to feel how you feel, but you are so unable to break out of the fantasy bond because, you want them back, and, they were so great in the beginning, and I've never had a love like that, and that felt so good and everything about it. But even when you realize that it isn't really what it was, you still want it back. And that runs into childhood issues for people as well. But think about it. Don't you think that means that you start to exert an inordinate amount, maybe unconsciously, of control on the other person? Controlling the person with BPD who's already trying to control you. And is there some shared or similar woundedness to BPD and codependency? Well, it's not exactly the same, but for some people, if they have severe codependency, then yeah, it gets closer to BPD trait like emotional difficulty and trying to get what you need out of a relationship in ways that you might not realize consciously what you're doing. Just like that's the whole story for people with BPD, only it's more primal. It's way different. But everybody thinks like they're the one that did everything to you. You know, they fooled you, they tricked you, they seduced you, they made you get into it. No, they didn't make you do anything. But so with this then, why is it so written all over the echo chamber that it's people with BPD that make other people do all this stuff that is rescuing, trying to fix, etc.? As if like you're just doing it for that person. And what's wrong with them when they don't want it? Because they don't want it. They don't want to be rescued by you. They don't want to be controlled by you. And they have their own engulfment fears. But then there is that codependent control, whether somebody's aware of it or not. So I just think it's interesting that all over the echo chamber of where people write stuff and etc., it's like, well, the borderline, you know, does all this stuff, and they're horrible bad people, which I don't agree with. They can have horrible bad behavior, but they're not horrible bad people. And they're not all women. There's a lot more men with BPD being diagnosed these days, and a lot more men with it, whether they're diagnosed properly or not. So just think about the dynamics here that aren't so simple as the borderline does everything. First, it's all great, then it's all bad. Now you have to figure out how to get that good part back. Because in the face of the bad, and in the face of, you know, what is abuse, and in the face of what doesn't work, and in the face of what's not healthy, you just keep trying harder. You just keep giving more. You just keep taking way too much. And in the name of what exactly? Love? Oh, but they were amazing. So they have to be able to figure that out to be amazing again, right? Just for you. So I think we have a slanted narrative here. I'm not saying people with codependency do the same things that people with BPD do in relationships. No. And I'm not saying that you're to blame for what they do. No. But you know, they're not to blame for everything you do either. I wonder if you do take the time to watch this video, because this isn't what people want to hear, what do you think?